Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Gyan Bhakti. We are currently exploring the scripture Mysticism of Srimad Bhagavatam. Commentaries by my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayananda Maharaj, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So in today's satsang, we will cover the mystical meaning of the story of Krishna and Sudama. The story of Krishna and Sudama is the story of the soul, Sudama, in its process of realizing its divine friend, the Supreme Self, Krishna. The fried rice Sudama was eating secretly represents karmas performed in the past on the basis of egoism, selfishness, attachment, and expectation of reward, which in turn leads to the formation of impressions that cause future births. Dominated by such karmas, the jiva or individual soul must confront the torrential rains of the world process. Due to ignorance, one cannot surrender to the divine being, his own inner reality abiding in his very heart. Due to ignorance, he refrains from sharing with the divine being. That is, he lacks the understanding that it is God who works through me in all that I accomplish. I am only an instrument in his divine hands. This lack of understanding that gives importance to the ego causes the soul to experience poverty, to become like that ragged Sudama with tattered clothes, begging for some happiness in the realm of body, mind, and senses. But there comes a time in the course of one's evolution when we begin to share with God with profound devotion and ego begins to fade away. Purified intellect or buddhi, the wife of Sudama, sends out a clarion call to the soul that God is ever present and ready to support us. However, we must journey through the process of sadhana, spiritual discipline, to reach the palace within our heart where the divine presence ever abides. The moment we listen to that voice of reason, we realize that there is no reason to be miserable or poor when we had a vast treasure hidden right within our room, a secret door with a view to eternity. At first, treading the spiritual path seems difficult, fraught with painful discipline and struggle. However, once we experience the awakening of divine love and the door opens through meditation and samadhi, superconsciousness, we realize that being in communion with God is the simplest state of existence. During the state of samadhi, an aspirant finds himself in the presence of divine grandeur, wherein the burden of misery is lifted and one is united with his eternal friend, the divine self. Krishna's eagerly welcoming Sudama is indicative of how divine love flows towards the aspirant who has sincerely opened his heart. If you come to meet God in a spirit of surrender, God runs to you. He scatters his crown of eternity and his yellow garment of infinity, all the divine attributes which transcend human mind. From that transcendental realm, he comes to the devotee and showers his blessings upon him. The gift of parched rice was accepted by the Lord, even forcibly, as it were. Any offering given with profound devotion, no matter how little, is delightful to God. Further, Krishna's eager consumption of the food is symbolic of how quickly all karmas or impressions of selfish actions are destroyed by the knowledge of the self that arises in samadhi. When Sudama left Krishna, he felt no desire to ask his divine friend for material assistance. In the experience of divine communion, all material desires are suspended, all fascination for objects transcended. The amazing change in his village that greets Sudama on his return home is symbolic of the transformation that takes place in the life of an aspirant through the experience of samadhi, in which the unconscious is overhauled and impure impressions or ashubha vasanas are replaced by pure impressions or shubha vasanas. When the aspirant returns to normal consciousness again and again from the practice of profound meditation, he finds that all that was once little and limited in his life has undergone a tremendous transformation. Every experience becomes a mirror reflecting the eternity and infinity of existence. His intellect blooms into intuition. The lover and the beloved have become one. The soul and God are blended. This is indeed the blessed goal of life, self realization or mukti. What a beautiful story, full of depth and meaning. We can even meditate on it or meditate on its various aspects for opening our unconscious. So let's move to the next episode, the marriage of Subhadra and Arjuna. One day, as sage Shuka was giving his teachings on the glory of Krishna to King Parikshit, the king asked, "O sage, how did my grandfather Arjuna come to marry Subhadra, the sister of Krishna and Balrama?" Shuka explained that at one time Arjuna had to go away from the other Pandavas on a long pilgrimage. In the process of visiting various pilgrimage centers, he reached the place where Krishna and Balrama lived. At that time, Balrama, Krishna's elder brother, was inclined to marry Subhadra to Duryodhana, the evil-minded leader of the Kauravas. Although this might seem strange, Balram had a special liking for Duryodhana because Duryodhana had been his disciple in learning the art of fighting, mace fighting. However, Krishna and his father Vasudeva were not pleased with this idea. When Arjun arrived at Krishna's palace and saw Subhadra, he became enchanted by Subhadra and his mind determined to marry her. Although Krishna did not want to openly defy his elder brother Balram, he did encourage Arjuna in a subtle fashion to pursue the princess, who obviously was deeply in love with Arjuna also and wished the marriage to take place. One day, when Subhadra was going to worship in the temple, Arjuna kidnapped her and carried her away in his chariot. The moment Balrama heard that Arjuna had captured his bride in this forceful Kshatriya warrior fashion, he became very angry. However, Krishna and others pacified him. Eventually, Balram agreed that this was the best match for his sister and he welcomed Arjun with generous gifts of wealth. The mystical meaning. Initially, the 5 Pandava brothers were all married to Draupadi. Then, as time passed, each Pandav took another bride and Arjuna married Subhadra. Symbolically, Draupadi represents intellect. Arjuna represents the individual soul and his brothers represent the 4 Purusharthas, the 4 purposes for which a person exists. Dharma, meaning ethical values, artha, material values, kama, vital values or desires, and moksha, spiritual values. So the soul along with the 4 purposes of life, those are the 5 brothers, represented by the 5 Pandavas. They are married to the intellect or Draupadi that serves each of the values. However, as spirituality advances, the soul becomes wedded to a more purified aspect of intellect. Subhadra, the sister of Krishna, represents that sublime intellect that is moving towards intuition. Balarama, in his willingness to facilitate Duryodhana's marriage to Subhadra, represents the cosmic mind that is in tune with nature. The cosmic mind is ever ready to invest great powers on a soul through the process of evolution, granting whatever one desires during the course of a long natural process. Shiva has a similar role to Balarama. He grants to everyone according to their karmas, even though certain things may become contrary to one's spiritual happiness. Krishna, on the other hand, represents a special specialized divine energy that transcends nature and grants to a devotee only what is positive for his evolution. Therefore, Krishna outsteps Balrama's inclination and Subhadra is married to Arjuna rather than to Duryodhana. So with this, we conclude our satsang for today. This is Swami Nikhilanand. Om Tat Sat.